Now, you may approve a policy and not see the fruits of that labor for quite a number of years. If you think of some of the big projects that we're seeing advance right now, they may have been approved, some of them as many as 5 or 8 years ago.
Welcome to Real Estate for Real People, hosted by Shannon and Tamara Stone. As award-winning real estate professionals, the Stone sisters have spent years helping people navigate the complexities of buying, selling, and investing in real estate. From first-time homebuyers to seasoned investors, Real Estate for Real People is the go-to resource for anyone looking to make smart decisions in the world of real estate. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from some of the best in the business.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Real Estate for Real People. We are excited to be here today with Doug Gilchrist from the City of Kelowna. So he's the city manager. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today. We're going to talk about the overall plan for the city, forecasting what you see, and then everywhere in between pretty much. So Doug, thank you so much for joining us here today. Perhaps to start, you can give us a little bit of your background and maybe dive in a little bit of sort of what you do.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Thanks for having me. I love talking about the city, and given my role and the exciting development that's happening here in terms of our growth and community mindedness and the changes that are happening for sure. My background, I've been in Kelowna 19 years, all of it with the City of Kelowna, having various portfolios throughout my time here, including probably the most relevant one for this conversation, the planning and development and real estate departments. Since I arrived, the bulk of those anyway. So I've had either a hand in or oversight of many of the things that have helped develop our city. Whether you like those things or not, I guess is a matter of perspective. But we're doing our best to evolve the city as we mature.
So you've seen a ton of change. Yeah, not an easy job that you've got, because I think you face, it's sort of funny because very few people are actually born and raised and from Kelowna. Shannon is one of them. She was born here. I'm an implant, so I was born in Edmonton. I've lived here for all but a year and a half of my life, but still, it's there's a sense, I think, of people going, okay, well, we're big enough. Let it stop. We don't want we got here, but don't let anyone else, and sort of roll up the drawbridge. And I know you're trying to balance that with growth and with the things happening in town. And I'm sure that isn't very easy. And you would have seen a huge change over the 19 years that you've been here. Would have been significant change.
Yeah, for sure. And it starts with policy, but it ends with public acceptance. People have to like the policies and the way they're deployed in what the outcomes are. And I think it depends on who you speak to, whether or not we're getting them right. The people that are moving here seem to absolutely love Kelowna. Those that have been here for a very long time probably have a little bit of nostalgia about the way things used to be when there was go-karts and water slides. But you can't stop the growth of a city. You can certainly manage it, which is what we do. Manage it in the best way possible. But we have a lot of really important constraints and valuable constraints that I think play a significant role in how this city evolves and how it's different than other cities, with over 45% of our land as agricultural, and most of it that in the ALR. That's a limiting factor and an important one. I think it gives us character. It gives us food security, it gives us wine tourism, and all the interesting things about Kelowna. A lot of them can be related to that aspect. The mountains and the water is a boundary, limitations around access to water and things like that. So no two cities the same, and we all manage them a little bit differently. But ultimately, it's those big picture policies that drive how we develop. Whether we have high rises or low density and things.
So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Talking about how we are a little bit landlocked here, which is amazing. I mean, you drive down Ben Boland or you drive down some of these streets and you're right in the city, and yet you've got farmland right beside you. I mean, as you said, I think that's something about which makes the Okanagan and makes Kelowna special. But what is the city's plan for growth? We've heard over the years, and of course we're seeing it everywhere, growing up. So is that still consistent? I know we don't have much land or lots coming available on the market that we're seeing at all.
Yeah, I think, infill and urban densification is certainly our policy guidance right now. An official community plan, some of the work that we did in Imagine Kelowna, which is a big community outreach exercise to see what people really wanted to see for the future of our city. Sustainable growth through urban densification has been the mantra for a number of years. Now, you may approve a policy and not see the fruits of that labor for quite a number of years. If you think of some of the big projects that we're seeing advance right now, they may have been approved, some of them as many as 5 or 8 years ago in the case of like Central Green. They're big picture, long-term projects. So you don't shift those policies on a whim, right? You put those in place for a period and hopefully do some amendments as things evolve. High density along important transportation corridors is a big push right now to try and alleviate some of our traffic congestion and give people other options to get around. So that's sort of one of the shifts we saw in the last OCP approval. It came forward or got finalized last year. But yeah, certainly densification of the urban core. And that doesn't just mean the high rises, that's what people gravitate towards. But, densifying neighborhoods could be as small as, turning single family lots into 4 lots or 8 units on a single lot. And that's, referred to by the planners as gentle density. We don't totally overturn neighborhoods, but we provide an opportunity for a lot more people to live in.
And I know in the past there were hub spots, I think, that were going to be concentration areas in Kelowna, one being kind of Sopa Square in that area. I think there was also another one planned in Rutland area. Is that still sort of in the plan? And do I have that correct?
Yeah, we've referred to our planning model in the past as a hub and spoke model with 5 urban centers. And those urban centers have been largely unchanged for quite a while now. The smaller ones are kind of evolving a little bit, like in Glenmore and certainly the UBC area. But yeah, for the most part, those are our concentrations. We like to try and do town center planning every 5 to 10 years for each town center, go in and revisit that town center plan like we did for Capri Landmark a few years ago. So we can make sure we have the right road networks, the right park capacity, the form and character of amenities within those service areas. Trying to really justify or balance out, I guess, the residential with the commercial and office space. And right now we're working on the North End plan along with the Tolko lands, or it's kind of the 2 bigger long-range planning exercises that are underway at the moment.
Doug, can you reiterate for those who aren't aware of these, core neighborhoods or town centers? Which are those? So you'd mentioned 2, Glenmore and UBC.
Pandosy, downtown, Midtown and Rutland. And Midtown's kind of blended a little bit between Midtown and the kind of that mall area. And so those are our key corridors, but they are starting, as they grow out, the boundaries, I think, become a little bit more blurred with the high transit or high transportation corridors that we're going to want to see density connecting those town centers a little more than maybe in the past.
Right. And so that sort of goes into the next topic is, lots of people come here and of course our population almost doubles in the summertime, or it seems like that on the roads. What is happening and what's the plan for the roads? Are we going to see any overpasses? Is that talked about, or what's happening there?
There are areas where we're going to see over the long term, both pedestrian overpasses and possibly vehicle connections, like places like UBC and the airport, that called the Gateway. That may see some significant roadway overpasses in the future, but that's a bit of a study exercise right now. Pedestrian overpasses, at Central Green, we have one that'll be constructed in the next year or so. We are talking about a couple other locations where it might be valuable to have that connection between the south part of the city and the north. Just for enhanced cycling, better pedestrian safety, improved traffic flow on 97.
Well,
it contribute.
It's great. I mean, I'm a cyclist and I love to go out and use the rail trail and go out around the airport and back. And I live in Lower Mission, and going down Ethel now, the sort of safe area that you've got, the bike path where you're physically removed from the traffic. It's fantastic. It's really nice to see. You feel much safer, and I think the vehicle traffic likes it as well. They don't have cyclists riding too wide in front of them, and it's a great improvement. It's nice to see Kelowna going in that direction.
we put a lot of time and energy into that off-road cycling network, and getting more creative now to see if we can stretch our dollars with the Abbott Street corridor. We tried a new model. It's kind of a lower cost, rapid deployment model instead of the big expensive one. And we'll do that where we can to get the linkages that are missing. We're not quite there yet in putting all the links together, but it's coming along. And I think this council is similar to past councils, is really invested in alternative modes. But they also have a real keen interest in some of the important road network links that aren't yet complete, like the Clement extension all the way to UBC is a big one. Some enhancements out on Glenmore Road into Lake Country, even just for cycling safety. The Birch Road extension. There's a few different ones that are really important links that hopefully we're going to advance onto this council.
I like that.
Now, and will we see anything? Oh, sorry, Tamara.
No, you go.
Will we see anything change with Pandosy and Gordon, or Lakeshore and Gordon? I mean, we've got a few developments happening there. We've got Aqua coming. We've got Mubala. We've got Caban. We've got the new one that's right beside Playa del Sol. Those are going to be rental units. Is the roads, as I've heard a few people saying, this is just, of course, everybody talks, but making Lakeshore one way and Gordon another, going the other way, and some of those sort of things. Are we going to see anything in that direction?
I think there'd be a lot of fireworks if we made Pandosy or Lakeshore one way. At the moment, no, that's not an intention at all. There's definitely, we want to see a push on urbanization. We have a lot of places that still have a rural cross section and no sidewalks. So I think that's an important piece in any of our town centers to try and do that at an accelerated pace. There's some key networks like DeHart further up in the mission. So when we do advance DeHart Park, which will be coming the next couple of years, that whole street will be urbanized and finished off. Richter Street is another important network street that's unurbanized and has the potential to increase capacity. So we are advancing some design work on Richter Street to see what that might look like. Of course, Gordon is largely finished. That's all finished in terms of its capacity and its width and urbanization and all of that. So yeah, there's some important pieces for sure. Enhanced transit going up and down KLO adjacent to Okanagan College. And then, as those major projects kind of get finalized, I think that's the time when we want to take a closer look at how well planned those urban centers are. I think of a couple thousand units in that Pandosy area right now under construction or more, with Aqua if you reach out that far. So how those really play out at post-construction, I think will be important for us to pay attention to.
Big one that people ask about a lot, and I don't think there are any plans for it, but a lot of people talk about a bypass. Will we at some point, do you see it, Doug, in your foreseeable future at the city and ours here living here? Are we going to see another, a bypass so that people aren't going down Highway 97 through Kelowna? And I know that's not just a municipal question, that comes to provincial and I think even federal as well with the highway, but any talk of that at all?
Yeah, certainly talk. The province had undertook a study that had lots of different names associated with it. But that started probably 8 or 9 years ago. They've since now released the view to that report. And I think the closest thing we'll see to a bypass that we're hopeful to advance sooner rather than later is the Clement extension. So extending Clement from Springfield all the way through to the university and then ultimately connecting with the highway and the airport. That's probably the closest to a bypass we'll see in the near term, at least anyway. Now, as the city grows out past, 250,000 people, I'm sure all of that would be revisited. There is capacity to widen Okanagan Lake Bridge by a lane. It was designed for that originally, to add one lane to there, but the constraints are really on either side of the bridge and not so much the bridge itself.
I didn't know that there was that to add a lane at the bridge. I had never heard that.
Right.
Yeah, that was when it was originally designed, it had that capability.
That's great.
So what that looks like today in terms of engineering and seismic and costs and so on, I'm not sure. But
Doug, what is the population of Kelowna, and what's the forecast for 5 and 10 years out?
So just under 150,000, 180 here in the immediate region. And then that grows quite significantly to our larger catchment for things like the airport. Of course, that's, beyond just our region. And the hospital and the university, and colleges, of course, are our biggest attractions that bring in, well over 2 million people a year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So looking and talking about, having more people moving here and needing to have some space, and we don't have the land, talking about suites, as we know that, it's gotten a lot easier for people to put a suite in. Is that still the case? Is that any sort of talks about that right now, or any changes in that?
Yeah, so suites are allowed in any of our single family zones and some of our other zones under the new bylaw. It's pretty wide open here. We'd like you to have a license and make sure that they're compliant with building code and all that, so it's safe for the people living in them. But no, I think we kind of crossed that bridge quite some years ago, and we're going to continue to support that model. What we're really working on now is an infill. We'll call it infill 2.0. So we introduced the idea of 4 units on a lot through our infill program, I want to say about 5 years ago, maybe longer. And that really took hold. We did 700 lots as a single blanket zoning that allowed for those ones. And now we're doing the second version of that, which will be a much greater number of lots within our single family neighborhoods. And we'll see what comes of that. We're going through the input stage right now and the policy development. But I think that'll be a real foray into, a nice form of density that doesn't really overturn our neighborhoods.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And is that the new area going to just expand from what's currently there, going into maybe a little bit more Kelowna South and that direction?
Yeah, I think, it's not all sort of finalized, but I think it has potential in all of our areas in and around our town centers that aren't, super high density.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's, it's interesting because we see a trend, of course, being realtors, we have a lot of people that are moving here from outside the area, and we're finding a definite movement where people, like a detached home. Not everybody, but a lot of people want a little bit of grass. They want their own yard for their dog or their kids. They don't need it to be a massive, home or massive property, but they do, they want a little space. And I think that's a weak spot in our market. We don't have a lot of that available product necessarily. So
we certainly want to see both the developers as well as our own policy be a little more creative. To give the marketplace opportunity to develop that different form of housing that, as our we go through demographic changes and the bulge, that we adapt to that. And we don't just kind of pigeonhole people into what we've always seen built, that people get a little more creative. I remember a few years ago up at the ponds, they came up with the real narrow lot, small footprint housing, some of which could even have a suite in them on the RU3, and it sold like hotcakes, and it's still a popular product. Yet we don't see a lot of it being built. Policy allows for it, so it's kind of an interesting dynamic on trying to maximize footprints and build the bigger home and get the value out of every lot versus really being in tune with what the market is looking for.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think there is huge opportunity, and yes, those properties up in the ponds continue to sell like hotcakes. And we've had a couple of them listed this year, and there's been tremendous demand for them, which is great. Panhandle lots, what's the city's stance on that? I was just at a home this morning, and it's a beautiful big piece of property. It's actually an acre, over 300 feet deep, but it's in Lower Mission. Is there an opportunity to do something? I know you don't know where the property is, and I won't say it, live here, but is there opportunity to, do a panhandle and subdivide the back off? Or are we just sort of looking at RU6 right now and maybe a carriage home in the backyard?
Yeah, I think I'll leave that one to my subdivision approving officer.
Sounds good.
Yeah, they haven't been typically supported, but I know there's been anomalies over the years where they have been created. I think some of it depends a little bit on the situation. For the most part, I haven't seen that being a big policy shift. But with the movement towards wanting to get more density out of these lots, I think there's room for some creativity.
I love that.
With more of these lots, these RU7 lots that are coming through, we are starting to see many developers coming from Vancouver. We're even seeing Toronto. We field questions quite often from developers looking to expand into the Kelowna market. How easy is it for a new developer to come here? How hard is the development process and the permit process once they, purchase one of those RU7 lots? Is there decent opportunity for them? You speculate on that?
If it's RU7 under our current infill program, is very simple. You bypass the DP. There's no requirements for development permit. You go straight to building permit, and that was the beauty of that program. It was trying to accelerate the availability of more land in that form out there in the marketplace, and the absorption's been really, really good, and it continues to be. But overall, our permitting process, as painful as some people might think it is locally, from a comparative perspective around the province, it's considered one of the best. It's only going to improve from here. We have all kinds of technological advancements, digitization of our services, so that people can apply and process and move through the system much more quickly in a digital format, working whatever hours they want to work, not when City Hall's open. And ultimately, I think we're going to be leaders probably in the province, if not the country, in terms of development processing of approvals.
That's amazing. That's great for us to know as well. That's incredible. Yeah, congratulations. I think that's a huge focus, just as we see more and more developers wanting to expand here. So that's great for us.
It's been a really significant effort for us, and it's been fun for some of my team to participate in all of the policy roundtables of the province and working with them on how to advance precedent approaches throughout BC. We're working with Deloitte, we're working with the policy groups at the province specifically, working with local government management association, and in some cases they're going to emulate what we're building here.
That's great. So Kelowna is open for business and making it easier and easier. Yeah. Quick question, and I know we can sort of have a couple questions and we'll wrap things up here. But the water, so Hall Road, we had thought was going to be having sewer go through. It's so just wondering if there's any areas that are going to be concentrating on waters coming through or sewer coming through, or what's the next area that's going to have sewer?
Yeah, so we were successful in advancing both some of Hall Road. I can't remember the total area that we're going to be allowing or working on sewer development, as well as some areas in Rutland that are still still on septic.
Excellent.
So we have an overall arching objective to have all city lands in any urban area off of septic, and we're advancing that. There's a big push this year on the capital side to advance a whole host of lots. I don't know the number of them offhand, but certainly I can direct you to a project page that shows the boundary and the lots that'll be receiving.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's encouraging. That's good. And even I think some of the areas as well, I know we were recently dealing with a property and they've got the street has 100 millimeter water line. And in order to accommodate, more subdivision or what have you, that needs to be upgraded to 200 millimeter. And I think that's on the books or in discussions. I think it's a few years away, but I guess the first priority is going to be to get water and sewer to areas that are underserviced right now, and then to look at upgrading. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's an evolution. So as we change our OCP to allow for higher density, then our servicing of that density has to follow suit. In some cases, if it's large tracts of land, then it's generally paid for through either development cost charges or the developer would front end it if it's kind of a greenfield site. But if it's a brownfield site in an urban center, then generally that'll fall under either DCCs or the city to advance that work, which is the case of the sewer in Rutland. And then the lots can just connect in once we have it in the street.
Right.
That's great.
Perfect. So a couple quick questions. What are you've been there for 19 years. It's a long time, and seeing the change in the city and how we've grown and changed. What are moving forward and looking future-wise? What are you most optimistic about for Kelowna?
Well, I'm supposed to be optimistic about everything.
If you had to choose something, what first comes to mind, would
Well,
you say?
there's a couple things. I think the North End is going to be amazing.
Mhm.
I'm really excited about the North End plan and the Tolko lands out there on the waterfront. I think that's going to be, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to design and build something really, really special.
And Doug, what is
And
going to go there? What is it? Has it been decided upon yet? Is it, we've heard all kinds of rumors that it's high rises and that it's going to be like, what's the mark? Granville Island and everything in between. So
it's probably everything in between.
yeah.
Very safe answer.
No, it has not been finalized yet. The first iteration of the site concept will come to council this year, and they'll provide some feedback, and then we'll get additional community feedback before it gets finalized. It's definitely a bit of an iterative process, but the teams have been working on it now for a number of months, and I think it has just an incredible potential to be really, really special.
Oh yeah.
Certainly the waterfront will be in the public realm. Access to the waterfront, like some of those examples you used, and that'll be critically important with high amenities within the development as well, in terms of parkland or maybe institutional, like some other alternate uses and so on.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, that one's got me really, really excited. I think the potential for better water connection and on-water use as well. And some of the work that we've done with previous and this council on the rebuild of Parkinson Rec Center, I think is going to be absolutely incredible for our community. It's we're doing a bundle of recreation and cultural facilities, and it's going to be serving all of our community and really bring us to a new level. And I would say we're a little bit behind in terms of some of our indoor rec facility investments, and what we're embarking on here, I think, is going to really catch us up.
Oh, that's great. Well, will there be hockey rinks there? It's okay.
Our next round of hockey rinks sounds like you have kids that play hockey.
I do, yes.
Our next round of hockey rinks will be the CNC. 2 new additional rinks are envisioned there. I think 2027.
Perfect.
But no, the Parkinson rebuild is a triple gym and a large 10-lane pool.
Amazing.
Among a bunch of other things like daycare possibility and cultural facilities and
that's
dinner
exciting,
venues.
Especially with that location. That'll be amazing. Be great. Quickly, UBC growth. What sort of, or do you know what they're forecasting for that?
Not off the top, I don't. I know they continue to kind of work in balance between academic growth, recreation growth, facilities on campus, and trying to accommodate their residential. They have some targets for residential on campus, and I think they're getting close to their target right now. They continue to build some really fabulous buildings on campus on all 3 fronts, actually. And of course, then they have their downtown campus under construction now, which I think is probably would be number 3 on my list in terms of level of excitement. That building itself, but also the things they're putting in it. With the number of students that'll be living downtown, really, I think has potential to amp up the vibe downtown and have that. I think there's 8 or 9 stories in that building will be pure academic uses. So that one's going to be a big one.
Well, and you're seeing it already. I think there's a vibrancy that has returned to the downtown core that we haven't seen for a long time. And, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and there are people milling about, and there's a rejuvenated sort of sense of people living and enjoying there, not just, people working during the day, but I think people living in that downtown core. And of course, that's going to expand with everything that's under construction now.
Yeah, it's really important for sure to have that mix of residential uses and employment, and certainly to support our small businesses as well.
Exactly.
Is there, when you just mentioned employment, who would, or do you know off the top, who's the biggest employer right now? Or one that maybe people wouldn't think of, our listeners might not know of? I know aviation is big and some of those things that we don't maybe think about in day to day.
I believe KF Aero is the largest private sector employer. KF Aero is space. And then, the school district's a big one, ourselves, and interior health in terms of public. And now both of our post-secondary institutions with UBC and OC, both over 10,000 students are very big players in terms of overall employment too. So.
Wow, that's
amazing.
great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions, Tamara? I think we've covered
this
a
is
lot.
Great. I think people are going to be interested to hear from you, Doug, and just what you see, where we've come from, where we're going, and the fact that we're focusing on keeping people and making people happy with a sustainable growth. With public space, with housing for everybody, with really looking at the big picture. And I think you've covered that really well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you're doing at the city.
No problem.
All right. Take care.
Anytime.
Bye now.